So today we're looking at pitas. Pitas are easy. Homemade pitas are, let's face it, so much better than store-bought. Uh, I mean, the difference is night and day. They'll keep a day or two. They're pretty easy to make. We're going to make some in the oven and on the stovetop. Uh, if you're expecting to get a pita with a pocket, you can do that. It takes a little bit of luck and a fair bit of practice to do that, but when it comes out, it's very good. But regardless, it's a great flatbread. You can make it with whole wheat, AP flour, or a combination of the two, which is what I usually do. I usually use some all-purpose mixed in with whole wheat. Right. So first, I'm going to start off with some lukewarm water, about 2.5 cups. Or you could make it with 3, but I'm just going to do it with 2.5 right now. And then sprinkle in some yeast. This will be about 2 teaspoons of dry yeast. And I'm not a fan of rapid rise, so this is instant yeast. And mix it in there until it starts dissolving. Alright, and then we'll stir in about 3 cups of flour. And this flour, again, is a mix of whole wheat and AB flour. Mix in each cup as you put it in. Okay. Just put in one at a time and mix it in pretty well before you go on to the next one. And once you get the 3 in there and mixed in pretty well, you'll want to stir it pretty vigorously in the same direction for about a minute. This is to start developing the gluten. You can use a fancy mixer if you want, but I usually just do it by hand. Most everything I'm just going to do by hand if I can do it. Mixers are not a problem, though. There's nothing magical about that. It just needs to get the stirring in. Alright, so you can see it's all mixed in pretty well. Now, it's got to sit for a spell, and it's up to you. You can have it sit for 10 minutes. You can have it sit for 2 hours. So I'm probably going to do this about an hour because I've got to go to the store. So I'll just let this sit. All right, it's been almost 2 hours, and you see that the yeast has really gone to work. So now what we want to do, we want to take this sponge, and the sponge is, when we do a pre-ferment, you call a pre-ferment something else. In this case, we call it a sponge. It's very open textured and fairly liquid. So now we will add some salt, about a tablespoon of salt. And the salt, besides helping with flavor, also strengthens the dough. And then we've got about a tablespoon of olive oil. And that'll improve the flavor and also lighten the dough a little bit. A little bit more salt. All right. Mix that in. You see it's real bubbly. The yeast has really gone to work. And now I'm going to add some more for it to eat. And it's drop down some because a lot of that was air. And again, this is a much smaller area to work than I'm used to, but that's okay. You don't really need that much. You have pretty small space. Alright, now we're working on the dough proper, in the full final dough. So I will put in flour a cup at a time until it gets pretty thick, get really stiff. You scrape down the sides of the bowl. Of course, you want to get all the materials mixed in there. Some recipes that get stickier than others. It's getting pretty stiff. It's hard to stir, but I can't tell for sure if that's all the flour it needs. So what I will do is go on to start the kneading, and that'll give me some idea. So on a clean surface, get some flour on there, and I will the dry that was still on the bottom. Okay, see here, like with any kind of dough, you've got some that's not fully mixed in, it's still dry, but then in other areas it's fairly tacky. Sticky, which means that it'll pull away in your hand, and that is very much too wet for this. Then you've got tacky, where it feels a little sticky, but it doesn't come away in your hand. It just, your pen sticks to it. So, this is just a little bit tacky in places and dry in others. So I expect it's probably got plenty of, there, see, that's a little tacky. So I think I've probably got enough flour in there. And it's fairly forgiving. You just kind of get it in the ballpark. A lot of folks, they won't look at the recipe. They just know it well enough, and that's kind of how I am with sourdough. It's pretty simple, and it's mostly done by feel, but with most any other recipe, I always keep it on hand and look just to remind myself. So you want to do this for a few minutes till it's soft and pretty elastic. And in other words, it's kind of like Play-Doh. It moves without cracking, or it's pretty soft. So when I'm done with that, I'll oil the bowl, put it in the bowl, and let it rest for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Like it to be doubled in size. The kneading, again, it has two functions. One, you're incorporating air in there that the yeast can work with to help it do its respiration, fermentation, and also it helps mix the proteins from the flour, mix it with water, and that forms the gluten. And the gluten is the sticky bit that holds in the air. So that's what makes bread rise. All right. it's tacky, not quite sticky, but I've got it on my hands. That's probably in the ballpark. It's smoothed out some. It's very even. Everything's thoroughly mixed. So I'll get the bowl ready, put it in there. I'm going to start shaping. See, it's gotten a lot bigger. Alright, first I'm going to cut it in half, and you can do this with a knife or anything else. And half of it I'm going to put up for later because I don't want to have the whole thing. So it can go in the refrigerator. You can keep it up to 6 or 7 days in the fridge. And that's pretty nice if you want to come home from work and just make some pitas. Alright, I will start with, you can get them different sizes. I'll start with about this size. You can roll them out. I usually flatten it out by hand to about that big, but depending on what you want to make, you can make them double that size. Great for sandwiches. We use them instead of burger buns. This one will be a little bit bigger, about 1/8 of an inch up to 1/4 inch. And we'll see if if they balloon. Some of them do, some of them don't. Sometimes you'll get air pockets on the edge. Just, you'll get bubbles. Sometimes it'll turn out into a whole pocket. Sometimes it's just bubbles. That's fine. That's as far as what I'm going to be doing with them. I don't necessarily need the pocket. This is good flatbread. So this is a bigger size one, and you can see it's got white flour, that all-purpose, and then some wheat mixed in. It's about 1/3 wheat. You could easily have them, all wheat. That'll work just fine. You could have it all-purpose. I just don't do that. I like the taste of having some wheat in there better, and it's better for you. So I'll get these going, and then I will get the oven ready to go and the stovetop as well. Got everything warmed up, and I've actually cooked one in the oven, and I didn't have to use anything on the pan, no oil. I just put it in there about 450 for about 8-10 minutes, and it ballooned very nicely. So that's a good way to do it, and there's no extra fat from the oils. It's just about guaranteed to puff up every time you do it, unlike the pan, which for me at least is hit or miss. Now I'm going to work on the one on the stove, and the stove is up to a medium heat, medium to high. And I've got a little bit of oil there, and I put in olive oil at first, and it's smoking a little bit, which isn't the best, but it'll be okay. Using walnut oil or grapeseed oil is good because they can go to higher temperatures without smoking. But I figure a lot of folks have canola or olive or something like that. So, and I'm working in a smaller kitchen right now. So, put it on there. Now, when it's good and hot, put it on for about 15 seconds to kind of harden up the bottom side. Then I'll flip it over. Press gently there. And I may put on a little bit of oil, just a dollop. So, and it starts cooking in the middle, and it'll swell in a little bit. It's probably about double the thickness of what it was when I put it on here. And Have it on there for 30 seconds to a minute. Maybe flip it a couple times. It's getting nice and brown over there from the oil. That's good. And you can do this in any kind of frying pan. I'm just use cast iron because it's what I always use. So again, it's an easy recipe, and anything that you can cook in will be fine. There's puffing up. Be fairly light in the middle. All right. And when I'm ready to take it off, I'll put it in a clean cloth to kind of keep it fresh and moist, keep some of the heat in. Ideally, you want to eat them pretty soon after you make them, but they can keep. You just put it in a bag. They'll keep for several days. And the what I put in the refrigerator, it'll sit overnight. It'll be a little bit tastier come morning. Just be sure that you warm it up to room temperature before you cook it. That way the yeast can react properly. Cut one of these open. It's pretty well cooked in there. And it's got lots of air pockets. Now this one that was done in the oven, big air pocket, and that's pretty typical there. Again, with the stove top, it's hit or miss, but it's tasty either way. Sometimes I can get it to really blow up really well, but this is not my stove, so I'm not quite as used to working with it as I am at the one at home. But either way, these are very tasty. Good recipe to make with kids. It's pretty simple, a lot of room for error, so it's not very finicky at all. It's certainly worthwhile trying. Even when they don't puff up, I just use it. I could use it as a hamburger bun, hot dog bun, sandwich. As thick as it is, you could even slice it, and you have two thin flatbreads and just put meat in the middle. So it's good sandwich meat. Or you could slice it, toast it to where it's nice and crispy, and then use that for dips and that sort of thing.